America's criminal justice system is broken, and it continues to fail its citizens every day that we allow it to operate the way that it currently is. From policing to prisons and everything in between, there are flaws that need to be addressed in order to enact change and prevent more damage from being done. Policing is not neutral, and it never has been. And the system has been built off of racism and oppression, which is why we must defund the police, reform our prisons, and rehabilitate our convicts so they can re-enter society and succeed. I completely understand that there must be good guys in order to fight the bad guys. But there are different ways to go about it, and the way that we are currently operating is not it. By the end of this speech, you will see that defunding the police is a necessary step to take, and providing resources to the convicted is a must if we want a safer and happier community for us all. But before we can begin with all of that, we must understand how we got to the point that we are at today. And it all starts with our broken policing system. Like I mentioned before, policing is not neutral, and it never has been. Paige Fernandez from the American Civil Liberties Union emphasizes how they originated from slave catchers. From there, they evolved to enforce Jim Crow laws, and then in the 50s and 60s, they fought against the civil rights movement, and to this day, they are still racially profiling its citizens. Throughout it all, however, we were always taught that they are the good guys and then the criminals are the bad guys. But who made the two mutually exclusive? Because they're not. There are plenty of cops that are bad guys, criminals, or both, but we just call those ones bad apples. But if it's just a few bad apples, then why can't the good ones just kick them out? Because it's not just a few bad apples. It's an entirely rotted system. The system allows bad cops to be bad cops. It is not set up for the good cops to stand up to the bad ones. That is actually frowned upon through the idea that they must stick together and defend one another no matter what, even if it's unjust or unlawful. In an article from KTVU published in 2020, Officer Ryan Adler speaks about the bigotry, sexism, and toxic masculinity that he experienced while on the Redwood City Police Force. And he emphasizes how hard it is to speak up and be the good guy when it's so heavily discouraged. And the only reason that he was able to finally speak up is because he was forced out of the department when he tried to complain about what was happening internally. Body cameras are a good start towards more transparency, but that's all it is, a start. There must be more transparency coming willingly from inside of the police system in order to gain more public trust and have more accountability for wrongdoing from within the police force. Another way to ease tensions and build that trust between citizens and the police is to invest into the communities by reallocating police funding. Defund the police does not mean abolish the police. Police budgets are very high, and if we redistribute the money, we can help build the communities rather than tearing them down with convictions and arrests. The ACLU states that out of the 10.3 million arrests per year, only 5% of those are for serious crimes, which means that most of their time and resources are being spent on minor incidents that don't threaten the community. If we put some of their budgets towards sending healthcare workers to respond to mental health emergencies, towards preventative programs like jobs assistance, housing, and skill training, we could even relieve some workload off of police officers. With that relief, this would allow them more time for training. They can take up-to-date training courses, and we can have a well-trained police force rather than just a militarized one like we currently have. In turn, it would make the communities more confident in our police force, which would result in more trust in them as well. Police aren't always necessary either, and sending someone more qualified for the particular situation can also help our citizens. In Eugene, Oregon, there's a program called Cahoots, and they respond to calls involving mental health issues, homelessness, intoxication, substance abuse, and so much more that they were specifically trained to deal with, where the police have not been specifically trained to deal with. And in 2019, they had over 24,000 calls that they responded to and only required police backup 150 times out of the 24,000 calls. This shows that on the national level, a program such as this can help so many more people compared to our current way of handling those types of crises. But what about the current rise of violent crimes across America that we're currently seeing? Charles Love from the City Journal argues that violent crimes disproportionately affect Black communities. Therefore, policing is more heavily needed in those areas in order to keep them safe. However, the safest communities are not those with more police. The safest communities are those with more resources. The United States has the highest incarceration rates. So if policing reduces violence and crime, then we should be the least violent, the most law-abiding, and the most peaceful country in the entire world. But that is obviously not true. Unfortunately, the many issues with our criminal system only begins with the police, which leads us into problems with our prison system. Slavery is alive and well, and it is thriving in our prisons. The 13th Amendment states, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. It's written right there into the Constitution that as long as they are incarcerated, they can be treated as slaves. Wages for prison labor range from 30 cents to 95 cents an hour, or in fire camps, they can make about $1 to $2 when actively fighting fires and risking their lives. This would probably be fine with everyone if those people were all rapists and murderers, but that's not the case. Majority of these people are committing nonviolent and small crimes and still being treated this way. And keep in mind, a lot of the people in prison are also wrongly convicted. So to be treating somebody like this when they didn't even commit the crime is also very wrong. Additionally, the system unfairly preys upon people of color. So to allow slavery where African Americans make up the majority of the population is completely unjust, and it needs immediate reform. The American Friends Service Committee shows us that African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of white people. And it is not because they are more violent or likely to commit crimes because of their race, but instead because they are more likely to be targeted by police out of racial bias. Prison has simply become a way of keeping slavery alive and oppressing people of color beyond what they already experience in society every day. The oppression does not end when their sentence does either. Re-entering society with the label of being an ex-convict makes succeeding that much harder. Convicts are oppressed in society. The basics of getting a job, a place to live, becomes nearly impossible when just about everyone wants your background check. And having that conviction on your record is the worst thing that you can have. A majority of the jobs available to ex-convicts are either low-paying or paid under the table, both of which makes it extremely hard for them to have income on paper to get approved for loans or a place of their own. And if the income restrictions don't stop them from getting a place of their own, the background check will. Those two factors work together to keep ex-convicts down and to keep them from succeeding. And that makes their path so much harder than the average person that's working their way up from the bottom up. To make matters worse, ex-convicts cannot vote to help with reform or change, even though they are the most impacted and the most experienced on that topic. Even after serving their sentence and any probation or parole that may follow, they will never again be allowed to take part in voting for changing the system that keeps them down. This law is strategic, and it is in place for a reason. The more people of color that we can convict, the less of them there are to vote against it so that we can keep things the way that they are. With laws like these, we will forever be in a system that oppresses its people rather than empowering them. Okay, if you take anything away with you, please let it be this. First, our current system is built as a result of systemic racism in our country, and defunding the police is only the first step in repairing the damage. And second, prisons are modern day slavery, and giving ex-convicts a second chance is absolutely necessary if we want to better our communities long term. So what can you do? You can do for them what they can't do for themselves, and vote. Vote as if your loved one was behind those walls and being affected by your vote. I know I do, because my husband was a black man in prison for over 4 years in his life. He has been free for about 2 years, and it continues to affect us every single day. Whether it comes to him trying to get the job of his dreams, a decent job to support his family, a place of our own to raise our family, and also the PTSD that he experiences from what he had to go through in prison. It affects you in so many more ways. It is not simply a punishment and then you get to re-enter society as being this rehabilitated person. It's something that stays with you forever. So please use your voice because they can't. Thank you.